Cool. Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about something that we're really excited about, which is how Adobe powers the modern VAD. And there's some things that we're excited to talk about what we have learned at View over the recent years, and we're joined by Morgan from Adobe and Alvin Tevez, and I think we should go around and introduce ourselves. So I'll let you start, Morgan.
All right. Thanks so much, Daniel. My name is Morgan Pagraki. I'm part of the strategic development team for video at Adobe. Part of what I do is I work with a lot of Hollywood studios and long form users that are producing feature films and episodic television, commercial, and brand work to help get the most out of their Adobe workflow specific to video. So that's Premiere, After Effects. Frame.io is a part of that as well. But my background and my passion is virtual production. I have a background in camera tracking and LED virtual set building and camera technology as well. So I've kind of gone the whole gamut throughout my career, starting in cameras, moving into camera tracking, virtual production, and now in post. But my heart is always with virtual production.
And I'm Daniel Malik. I am the Director of Content and Innovation at View. My background also, is in the production space. So I was a creative director at a production company, doing a lot of commercials, music videos, that kind of stuff. And over the past 2 years, have made the transition to virtual production. And it is now all I live and breathe. And it's an amazing tool and something that we're excited to talk about. So.
Hi guys, my name is Alvin Lorenz and I handle the research and development at View. And my background, along with Daniel, is a cinematographer. I would shoot for Daniel when we were at the production studio, and now I try to find new tools and creative way to actually use virtual production and tell a story.
Awesome. Well, when Daniel and I actually first got connected a few months ago at the HPA Tech Retreat, I was super intrigued because he was telling me about this really amazing Adobe workflow that you guys had built, and I instantly needed to know more. Oftentimes we have so many different clients that are using our tools in ways that we never really imagined, and given my background in virtual production, I was excited to hear more about this. So you guys are using a combination of Premiere Pro, Frame.io, a little bit of Substance, which is a 3D suite of tools that is also part of the Adobe family as well. And I just wanted to dive into the specifics about how you guys are using it and how, more importantly, how you're also enabling a lot of other users to be able to create content in much of the same fashion. So tell me a little bit about how you originally kind of came up with this idea of marrying all these products together, what's driving a lot of this need, and what are some of the common challenges that you're finding a lot of your clients are trying to solve in this space?
Absolutely. Well, to give a little background, Alvin and I, like we just said, we both come from a production background. Alvin's always been very techie, but for myself, I'm not that smart. I know I look like a genius, but I'm not. So, when it came to virtual production and how we implemented it for ourselves, for our team, we weren't all Unreal Engine experts. We did not, know all of the technical details of how to create environments, do all that stuff outside of Alvin. And so we developed this workflow where we used a tool that was extremely familiar to us, and that tool is Adobe Premiere Pro. And the way that we would implement it, and we actually have some slides that we're going to show here in a minute, but was essentially to use Adobe to create light cards on the screen, to use it for plates, playback, setting keyframes for sweeps, and those sorts of things. Anytime we're dealing with 2D imagery, it ended up being a really fantastic tool for us, and it actually allowed us to, day one, as soon as we had the screen working, to start using virtual production. And so it was a really valuable tool for us, and still is to this day. And that's like the creative side of it. But Alvin, I'm sure, has more to share from a technical perspective.
So when I remember when I first try virtual production or look into the virtual production, I'm quite overwhelmed with a lot of the things that I need to learn for it. And I think the first thing that I have to do, or anyone that has to do when they're in that situation, is to find something that's familiar to them, or find a way to get advanced or to move forward using the familiar tools to them. And for us, when we were at the production company, we were doing a lot of back projection, and this is just a 2D plate image or videos, and the first thing that we would use is Premiere Pro because we just need something to play in there to be able to create a timeline and then shoot at it. So we got a chance to learn that workflow along the back projection, and then during the pandemic, that's when we actually started learning how to use the 3D aspect of Unreal Engine. But our main approach before is to use Premiere Pro for the timeline. It allows us to quickly play something in the background for rear projection, and also create some light cards or effects during the projection that we're doing at that time.
Awesome. And so it sounds like you were already pretty well versed in Premiere when you discovered, hey, I can actually use Premiere day one and at least put some of my investment to use on this beautiful LED wall. Were you always a Premiere editor, and do you carry over Premiere Pro into your editorial pipeline as well?
As a DP, I like the coloring aspect of it because every time I shoot something before, I would just put it in Premiere Pro timeline and play with the Lumetri just to check what I want, what I have. So I'm very familiar with that tool. I don't necessarily edit a lot of the clips or final piece for myself. I tend to play around with the color too much. But I'm very familiar. I know how to manipulate the timeline. I know how to manipulate the settings and to get what I want.
Yeah, and to answer the second part of your question, absolutely. Adobe, the entire Creative Suite, of course. It's not only are we creating things with Premiere, we're also using Photoshop and other tools even across our entire company. But we're talking specifically about virtual production. So, and for post, of course, we use Premiere Pro. We're using Frame.io. We're using Adobe After Effects across our pipeline. And what's really great, and we're actually going to show an example of this in a little bit, is how not only were we able to, on a recent project, use Adobe After Effects live on the screen, but also that had really good implications for us through post-production because we were able to use the same assets that sped up the post-process really efficiently. So,
Well, so nobody does virtual production just for the sake of doing it, right? I hope. And if that's not the case, then you have too much money. But tell me a little bit about your creative process, about how your team collaborates while you're starting to build the assets that are actually going to end up in a lot of these surfaces. How does that work? What's your creative process for ideating on graphics, on layers? What does that look like? Are you working with outside partners, or are you guys also doing this in-house as well? Both?
In the beginning, we work with a lot of external artists, whether that's the third-party band or independent artists that the client will bring in. We try to guide them in terms of what is the best approach, or if this is even the right tool for them. Do we need to use Unreal Engine, or do you want to just use it as a background plate for it? What is the end goal that you're trying to do in the video? Do you need to shoot everything on location, or do you need to shoot half of it in the volume? So a lot of those are comes into play, and then that's when we started to choose of what kind of content do we need for this. If they chose to do half of it in virtual production, okay. So then at that scene, it might need some virtual production environment of it. Okay, can we start with something that we could grab off the marketplace and start it as a starting ground, or should we start to look for an artist to be able to take the job from this point? It kind of depends on the project, I'd say, but a lot of educating and I think guiding the client in the beginning to make sure that they understand the process if they need to hire a vet or they need to introduce someone.
So I can't help myself. What's one piece of advice that you would give to all the clients out there that are thinking about employing this type of workflow? as far as keeping their expectations in line for whatever that creative vision looks like. What would you like everyone to know?
I would say it's not as easy as we make it look. So, the way that we love to market virtual production, and View is guilty of this, many virtual production studios are guilty of this, is that, it's easy as you click a button and anything can happen. The reality is that is the possible, but it does take work on the front end. And so, there are constant back and forths that are happening with clients and collaborators that we're working with in virtual production. And so, like Alvin said, it's different on every project, but some of the things that are consistent is we're wanting to show our collaborators the visuals that we're creating as often as we possibly can to get as much feedback as we can. Some of the tools that we're really excited about that help us with collaboration and feedback are honestly Frame.io. We use it in pre-production when we're creating environments. It's a tool that our customers are already familiar with, and so we can send them videos that go through an environment. We can send them stills of different virtual environments, and it allows them to review it when it's convenient for them. We don't have to get everyone on a call at the same time and watch something. And so that's been a really beneficial tool that obviously we use for post, but we use it in pre now. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it really is designed to be a filmmaker tool that's used throughout the entire production process. And the more you use it, the more rich, the version history can be, the more rich metadata you have to work with. But I'd be interested to know how many, just on average, what does that back and forth process look like with clients? I mean, I know for a fact that when I'm pitching ideas, like the idea of the project that I want to make is probably completely different than the idea of what you're trying to execute in your head. So I think one of the pieces of feedback that we often hear from clients is Frame.io really enables a lot of our creators to help ideate on kind of what that central shared vision is of the project. But I mean, like everyone, there's different clients, different projects, different personalities that are involved with that. But I mean, how long does that pre-production process usually take? And what advice would you have, as far as creative advice for aligning on what that idea looks like?
For us, the initial part of it depends on how quickly can they learn what is the tool and the limitations of the tool. And I think once they understand that, everything becomes a lot easier moving forward because we've had some clients that we've shown environment and we're like, it's not really what I want. It's not what we're looking for, or maybe it's they need something else, or they're looking for something, or they just suddenly see the massive environment of it and they just can't decide what they want. But we've noticed the more they understand about the workflow, okay, this is what we're gonna shoot. You don't necessarily have to do this environment in 3D. You could just find something for a plate shoot and then do it that way. If that works, then yes, and then the entire process becomes a lot faster and easier for that.
So, in addition to just plate content, you guys also deal with a lot of graphics as well. What does your graphics process look like? And I mean, you guys are producing content for just about every different type of medium. You're definitely not siloed into one specific type of content. What does your graphics pipeline look like, and how does that come into play?
Well, maybe we could look at it. So with the slides. So yeah, we could talk about that. So are we good to go with the slides? Oh. Okay, cool. I think I am in control here. Maybe. Oh. Did I accidentally exit out of it? To answer that question, as we're getting this sorted out, the way that we work with graphics is a little different depending on what we're doing it for. So for example, we may do something extremely graphical for the volume itself, meaning we're doing abstract sort of content, that kind of stuff, which that's exactly the example you'll see in a little bit. We did a ton of graphics with a recent commercial that was really exciting because it allowed us to change things in real time on set because we were working in Adobe After Effects. But then, obviously, we're able to take that into post production and use those same graphics that we created. And for the project that you'll see how it was incorporated not only in the virtual production aspect of our shoot, but also in the motion graphics elements as well. So, cool. But yeah, let's look at some of that if we have the presentation ready to go. Are we still waiting on it? All right, here we go. Let's see if the clicker works. Okay, so this is our VAD pipeline. Alvin, it would probably be best for you to talk us through this a little bit.
Yes,
From a high level. We can keep it simple here.
Yes, I can take it from the high level. So first, there is a discovery phase from our client perspective and from sales perspective, and to be able to understand the technicalities of it, and then we try to analyze and figure out the intent, the scope of the project, and then it goes to the development part of it. Whether that's you're using VR Scout or Stunt or Previs or technical tech viz at the stage, that's pretty much where we educate the client and trying to get really aligned of what they want and see if all of this tool would fit the actual need that they want for the actual projects that they have, because some of it might not even needed for the project. They might be able to shoot it on locations, or they might have some scenes that they need to shoot on locations that they might even find a way to shoot in the volume. And then after that, our VAD team is something that we currently implemented. That's something that we don't have before, as we use other VAD and digital artists before, but now we have it in-house. So that is the part where they gave the environments to the stages that we have, and then communicate with some of our operators in every stage. And pretty much that's the high level of it. And then the VAD is making sure that the tools that they have in there or the environment that they have is well equipped or optimized for the volume. And then the operators or the stage tech would now load in the actual stage, and then able to pre-light and ready for production.
Amazing.
Awesome. So, and then you can see too where Adobe is integrated throughout the VAD. So this is a really cool graphic. Definitely encourage you to take a photo of it if you haven't already. So now these are some assets that our head of VAD pulled together for how we actively use Premiere Pro for volume control. And so what you're seeing here is how we'll use light cards. You'll see along the timeline a few different sequences, and these are all keyframed. And so, this blue line will go up and down. What's really cool about that is it allows for reflections. So a lot of times if we're doing let's say a car glamour shoot where we're using abstract visuals, that kind of stuff, we might be doing a tight shot on the car and we want a glimmer to go by. That could actually be a kind of complicated thing, to do in the game engine. You're talking about like three-dimensional space and all this movement, but we just want a line to go or some kind of cool reflection. So a lot of times it makes more sense to just do that in Premiere Pro. It's much more efficient, much more seamless. And then this is how we'll stack layers for being able to control different things. And so what you're seeing here is some cloud layers and some gradient layers, and then a base sky color. And it allows for manipulation of individual layers for more creative control. So this is great. And Alvin, you could probably talk about this from a DP perspective.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit of in the perspective of the project that we shot last time. Is the production, we're struggling in terms of getting what they want from the current assets that they have or the current plates that they have. So it's not necessarily, they're not getting something that they were thinking in terms of it. So the DP and I work with a lot of LED volume shoots that he knows our workflow. So our band, Kevin, pulled out the After Effects project that we have for that assets that they have in there and start playing. And because since you could output the actual After Effects preview in the monitor, we just throw it in the wall to actually see it right away and look at it from the camera. So at that time, we're actually doing some real-time adjustment in the After Effects and seeing it from the actual reflections of the boat that we're shooting. And to the point that the DP took over the actual cart and then start actually manipulating and then giving it his own touch in terms of animation because it's very familiarized to him, and that's something that we notice a lot in virtual production in commercial is how do we translate traditional filmmaking to learn how to use virtual production. And one thing that we've noticed and one thing that we've learned is let's make it familiarized as much as possible. The more we could make it familiarized with them, Premiere is always going to be something that they always experience. After Effects, if you're a filmmaker, you've come across with After Effects. If I could create a light card in a volume using Premiere Pro and lights the subject, or maybe manipulate the background using the Premiere Pro on a layer system, it allows me to play around and really explore how to use the volume. And I think that's the beauty of that. And like from that example, we ended up actually using that workflow for the final cut of the shot because the DP was just having so much um, fun with it that, and also we don't have time to actually re-export the same thing because we're already back in pretty behind in schedule. But yeah, it's pretty cool that we actually found that solution.
Yeah, I think like the big shift that I've really witnessed with a lot of the creatives that we work with is, I think we're using a lot of these solutions as a shift in thinking about how we plan out a lot of our shots, and the end result oftentimes is really only as good as how much effort and energy you put into the pre-production side of this. And there are instances where if you take it seriously, put in a lot of the resources towards that planning phase, you can actually end up with extra time, what I like to call tinker time, if you want to try to get some shot variants. But I think, what oftentimes happens by the time you end up getting on set is, ooh, actually it would be really great if I could just tweak this one thing. And from your perspective, I'm sure that's like very, that just makes the job even more stressful because you almost have to anticipate whoever your clients are, what sort of things they're going to want to tweak day of. So having a tool that you're at least fast and proficient in that gives you a little bit of that granular control, I think probably, I hope, relieves a little bit of that stress.
And
Stressful enough on set.
I just remember from my experience as a DP before, as I learned how to light or as I learned the cameras or find my style in DP, I went in the process of planning. And my shot, here's where we're going to put the light, here's how we're going to shoot it, and here's the sun needs to be here, and then here's what we're going to do. And then that's good from learning perspective, but there's also a phase in my part of my DP that I completely push that away. Okay, let me just go into the shoot without planning. Let me explore. I know the tool that I have. I know the camera. I know how to use. I know the light and how to manipulate them, and just come up with something. And then really, some of those shots are actually explored in that moment. So I think there's something like that too in virtual production. Like you could get caught in the technicalities of it. What's the pixel pitch? What is that? You need the Unreal Engine. You need this. You need to render it that way. At the end of the day, it would be what's in front of your camera.
Did the tool work?
Yeah.
I mean, I think like that's what we're all here for anyway. We're here to make content, not to get caught up in the details. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the details, but I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you got the shot, does it really matter?
Absolutely.
I don't know. That's a rhetorical question.
Sometimes we needlessly overcomplicate things, and it's because we always are after perfection. And it's the same that's been true, I feel like, always as creatives. It's like, I don't know, I just want to keep making it better and better and better and better. But, if you keep working on something until you can't anymore, then you'll never get to release it. It's the same thing with the technology. Like, at some point, you just have to use it, and you have to share it with the world, and it's pretty cool. So.
All right, right on. So tell me more. What's next?
Let's see. So, layer stacking. This is very, very similar to what we just talked about. But again, a lot of times we're not even only using this for the wall, but we're using it for the ceiling. So we'll create massive light cards that have keyframes that shift color and that kind of stuff. This is really helpful for music where it's maybe more creative content that's abstract and interesting, and we're after like a very specific look. Again, a director, 9 out of 10 directors know how to use Adobe Premiere, so he or she may come in and they know exactly what they want, what they have envisioned, and they can actually open Premiere themselves and they can create the exact look they want. And this happens, all the time. I'm guilty of it. Directors, other directors that we collaborate with are guilty of it. But it's really putting this tool that they're already familiar with in their hands to control a like massive multi-million-dollar LED screen, which it's very empowering. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, Lumetri. So again, this is something that we use constantly for
same.
minor color tweaks, those types of things that we need to get things just right. For light cards, early on, we learned quickly that the light that volumes emit is not perfect lighting. This isn't rocket science. Everyone knows this is no secret. You have to use traditional lighting methods and techniques in the volume. You can't use the volume for all your lighting. However, we still use the ambient lighting all the time, and so having fine control over the entire spectrum is something that we're consistently using. I don't know if you have anything to add on the color side of things.
No, I love this tool. This is the first thing that I go to every time I go to
And
Premiere.
color management is really difficult to manage because from a technicality perspective, I mean, you have to manage, the color that the LED is emitting against whatever that spectral sensitivity of the camera you're using is. So I think, color is a much bigger deal, especially if this is something that virtual production is totally new to you. If you haven't shot on LED volumes before, color is one of the biggest considerations that you could possibly have, because there's quite possibly like thousands of combinations that you could encounter between LED wall, how the LED is reflecting light versus whatever subjects you're using versus whatever cameras you're using. It's having that ability to fine tune things on the fly is absolute must.
Yeah, and another thing I'll say too is we were doing a video not long ago. It was actually with Tom Cruise for a Top Gun promotional thing. He came into our Tampa studio. He was there for 4 hours. That's all we had him for, and he was shooting like a 2-minute long video. So we're like, okay, we have Tom Cruise for 4 hours. And the director I think it was his first time shooting in a volume, and we let him know, hey, you can use Adobe Premiere for this. And essentially what he was able to do is it was a spoken word thing. It was video playback behind him. He was making changes in real time to the content that was behind Tom Cruise for his monologue, because he was using Premiere Pro to do that. And so, because like he wanted things to happen on the dot with what Tom was saying in his delivery, he was able to make adjustments in real time, again, on the fly, which was super, super helpful for him. But he was changing color, he was doing all that kind of stuff. And that was the director of the project. That wasn't a volume control person doing that. That's the kind of thing that we get excited about at View, is putting the creative tools directly in the hands of the creatives. So,
Love it.
light cards, we already talked about this a little bit, so I'll skip past it. And then asset review. This is what we were talking about a little bit ago with Frame.io. It's such a phenomenal tool, but now we're using it on pre-production, which we never would have thought was something we'd do.
So what is, for any, let's say a commercial project, how long does your pre-production process usually take? I always like to ask this question just because most people think like, oh, you can have a week or two to set up and maybe we're good to go from there. But how long does pre-production actually take?
Depends on the project. We had one that we got to call the night off, and then tomorrow we have to shoot.
Oh.
So
okay, so
there's
it
just
can be done.
Yeah, there's some opportunities like that, I think. And yes, it's a very what do you call this? challenging. I think it depends on the challenge, but I think 2 to 3 weeks for us in terms of like gathering the assets and from the actual initial reach that we said that we want the shooting, we could do this. 2 to 3 weeks to give our VAD to make sure that they come up with the environments that they could build it or to have enough support for that.
And one thing that a lot of people don't know that I think is a useful tool, especially if you're working with sensitive clients, is that you can have internal communication between your own team and also external communication, and you can make sure that those comments do not get seen between teams. Just a pro tip.
Yes, it's very helpful, and we discovered this actually not that long ago too. So
hopefully not the hard way.
Yeah, not the hard way for sure, but yeah, definitely. I think it goes both ways too, because sometimes that client communication you want to keep private also, and that's something that's super valuable, and also the security features of Frame.io are essential, essentially on every project. We're signing NDAs and doing all this stuff. The last thing we want is for a video or an asset to get in the wrong hands, and so knowing that there's the safety is in place is also a feature that we rely on too. So
yeah, are you guys using anything by way of like forensic watermarking? That's another popular feature. I would imagine with like folks like Tom Cruise, security is of the utmost importance, but watermarking is something that can be enabled easily. You can also remove review links if you don't want somebody to have access to any of that content after the fact. But security is an ongoing discussion, especially as we start to migrate more and more of our production tools to the cloud. I think where a lot of IT guys, I think, are always triggered by a lot of the security. What can go wrong, especially when it comes to sensitive assets. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is something that that again we use every day. And one other thing I wanted to mention about that Tom Cruise project is he came in. He shot on a Thursday. They edited Friday, and then it aired Sunday. The Sunday of the Super Bowl. It was like during the Super Bowl. And so the interesting thing there is this was before we were using camera to cloud. And so it was such a clunky, I know, right? It was like such a clunky process. They were like, they actually had to fly the editor in, I believe, so that they could edit in real time, and they were working directly with the director. But even that, with camera to cloud, they not only could have been had the footage the next day without having to do that, but they could have been having it as we were capturing it. So lesson learned on that one for sure. But it's something that we do are now encouraging our customers who are coming into our studios to use. We don't always have control. Actually, most oftentimes we don't, because production companies all across the spectrum with all different budgets and things are coming into our studios to shoot, and so we have a recommended set of tools and things that we recommend for them to use, and Camera to Cloud is one of those tools. So.
Oh, well, thank you. So have you used Camera to Cloud on any of these shoots? And I mean, just for anybody that in the audience that isn't familiar, Camera to Cloud basically connects all those little red record buttons on the cameras directly to your editors. So there's actually many use cases that our clients are using even here at the show, where we have editors that are located in remote locations, and they can start working on that edit in parallel to physical production, which I think is like one of the coolest elements of how Camera to Cloud can really help accelerate the whole virtual production process and increase time to market. But I mean, in your experience, how much time does that save you? What does that turnaround time look like? Do you have editors that are working on edits at the same time? Do you have any examples of projects like that?
Yeah. So again, since we are production company agnostic, we don't employ editors other than our amazing editors that work for View and our marketing team and everything. One of which is right there. Give a huge prop to Nathan. But so essentially. What we do is we do recommend tools like Camera to Cloud. A recent example of that is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, in the lead up to WrestleMania, WWE came to our Orlando studio. They shot in 2 days. They shot 6 commercials, They were all like between 60 and 120 seconds, and they were like recreations of different movies. And so they did like 40-Year-Old Virgin, the Titanic, they did the Joker, like all these really cool things. And I wish I would have brought it because it's really, really badass. But you can watch it on our Instagram. I'm sure it's on there. But what was interesting about that is they came in and they shot it. And the production company that did it was not associated with the post. WWE had their own internal post that did it. However, they were literally able to get the assets as they captured them. So, like by the end of the first scene, 4 hours in, they already had almost like a rough cut of it because it aired the next for one of the commercials, not all 6 of them, but for one of the commercials, it had to air the next day on Peacock, and then the other ones were like just the day after and everything. And so with that type of workflow, like literally they needed assets or access to the assets as they were being captured because of the quick turnaround. And one of the value propositions that we have for our customers is speed and efficiency, and it's not only on the speed to to get your production up and going and get onto our stage, but it's also applies to the speed needed for turnaround. And so the fact that we can offer that and recommend that to our clients is huge. So.
That's one of the common lines that we hear across all of our users, regardless of whether or not they're employing virtual production technology today, is that everyone's being tasked to produce more content with like virtually the same or maybe a little bit more resources than they had before in the past. So I think that's one of the reasons why our team has recognized the need to really lean into a lot of the AI services to help take out some of the more tedious parts of editorial to make this process move a lot faster. But I think because we're producing so much content and because the deliverables are going up, having that immediacy for turnaround time is just becoming more and more of an expectation across the board. And I mean, one of the reasons why people choose to shoot on volumes in the first place is because you can shoot 2, 3, 4, 5 different locations from a single location. So why can't we also accelerate the editorial process of that as well to help shorten that time to market?
Absolutely. Do you want to watch the video?
Yes.
I think that's the next thing here. All right. So yeah, this is actually a behind-the-scenes kind of case study on the project that I was discussing. And so basically all the elements you see in here, they're like lines being drawn across the volume, reflection of the boat. These were all being played back live in After Effects, essentially, is how we're doing this. Alvin, before I play it, why don't you talk about how we pulled that off?
Just to give you the background, we wanted, when I was talking to the DP, we were looking at the monitor and what's the adjustment that we're doing in the actual After Effects composition. But we were thinking, it was like, what if we could see it in the actual wall? And then look at it from the camera's perspective. And then I was like, oh, okay, so I think we could do that by, we could send NDI to the actual wall because we have receivers and our studios are equipped with NDI to be able to pipe in the video. So we did that. We actually pipe the output of the After Effects to NDI and then catch it in the processor and then put it in our, blow it up in our LED volume. And then the camera's on a jib, and then you could instantly see the actual move and the reflections and the background in real time. So yeah, that was the main workflow that we did for that. It was never intended to use it as the final picture, but at the end of the day, we use it as the final picture, and then everyone's happy. They got what they need. Yeah.
All right, cool. Should we check it out?
My name is Jason Blanc. I'm a director at Diamond View, and we're here today at View Orlando. We're shooting 3 boats for Brunswick, and what a better place to do it than in a virtual production volume.
Part of the creative process is we established what kind of aesthetics we wanted with the brands and how we wanted to showcase the boats. We have one environment that is in on Unreal, and then there's a variety of different backgrounds that we're using, like animated, branded elements that they use within their collateral.
We're also shooting boats, so having a big stage like this and massive LED panels on the side that kind of wrap around into a volume, and having bay doors big enough to allow the boats coming in really is one of the main reasons why we're shooting it here.
That looks pretty sexy.
Yeah.
You want to buy boats, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Like, come on, I want to buy one of those boats.
Yeah.
And again, like our amazing marketing team threw that together, of course, in Adobe Premiere. So just another place where Adobe's a part of our process. So
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for taking the time to walk us through kind of the entire Adobe ecosystem of tools that you guys use. I always like to end a lot of these discussions on, for anybody that like maybe is thinking about getting into this space, what sort of advice do you have? What's the number one thing that you've learned throughout all of your experience the past couple years working in these types of environments? What advice would you have for the audience?
Well, what I would say is find partners and people who can help you achieve your vision, what you want to do. You don't have to do it alone. And so whether it's Vue or some of the other really talented, really innovative companies that are creating some really great resources in virtual production, align yourself with those brands, because it is complicated, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of people who are trying to figure the same stuff out, and you'll be surprised what you discover, the different tricks, the different things that help to both simplify the process and then also just get you connected with more people that are running after essentially the same vision.
To me personally, I think it's very important to learn the process, to understand the limitations of the tool, and to learn how to use it that way. And then also learn how to break them. And I think that's the fun part of it, is like, as long as you know the limitations of it, as long as you know the boundaries of it, don't make it too hard on yourself. Like, at the end of the day, this is a tool. And then limitations is give you more creative way to maybe use it, the technology. But yeah, so learn it, but also don't be afraid to break it. Yeah.
I love it. So virtual production is a team sport, which I have always said. And know your tools, but don't be afraid to break it. I like it. I think mine would be take whatever expectations you have and then maybe like just dial that back like 10%. And take a breath. If you need a moment to reset the stage, if something goes wrong, something always does go wrong. That's part of the fun.
Yeah. Be easy on yourself. That's really,
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. For anybody that's interested in learning more about Frame.io, Premiere Pro, my name is Morgan Pograki. Feel free to reach out to me. We also have a booth over in North Hall as well. Would love to connect. Thank you guys.